sea has a way of humbling anyone who thinks they're in control. That's what I learned the night my boat's engine died in the middle of a storm, miles from shore, when the ocean reminded me just how small I really was. I hadn't planned anything dramatic. It was supposed to be a simple fishing trip, the kind of overnight outing I'd done a dozen times before. The forecast had called for mild conditions, a breeze at most, and the sky had been a pale, lazy blue when I cast off that afternoon. My small cabin cruiser wasn't built for long voyages, but it handled coastal waters fine. I wasn't the reckless type. I carried life jackets, flares, a first aid kit, and even a hand-crank radio. But the ocean doesn't care how careful you think you are. By dusk, the horizon had begun to darken in a way I didn't like. A thick gray mass was forming, rolling fast and low, swallowing the sunset. I checked the radio, twisting the dial until the static gave way to a storm advisory. Stronger winds than expected, a system pushing farther south. Mariners exercise caution, the voice said flatly, as though reading my fate from a script. I debated turning back, but I was already a good distance out. My catch was meager, and I told myself I had time to wait it out. I'd seen squalls pass before. I was wrong. The wind picked up suddenly, cutting across the deck, carrying a chill that raised the hair on my arms. I went below and secured loose gear, pulling on my weather jacket. When I returned topside, the waves had already begun to change. Longer, meaner, each one slapping against the hull, harder than the last. The sun was gone completely now, hidden behind the slate curtain. Then the rain came. At first a drizzle, then sheets that blurred the world into streaks of black and silver. The wiper struggled against it. I flipped on the navigation lights, their red and green glow barely piercing the darkness. I eased the throttle, trying to hold course toward shore, when the engine gave a stuttering cough. My stomach dropped. I tapped the gauge. The fuel was fine. I shifted to neutral, then back. Another cough, then silence. The hum that had been a constant companion vanished, leaving only the roar of wind and water. "Come on," I muttered, turning the key again. Nothing. I tried twice more, each attempt only bringing the hollow click of failure. The boat began to drift, broadside to the waves, rocking violently. Panic pressed against my ribs, but I forced it down. I grabbed the radio mic, pressing transmit. "Coast Guard, this is vessel Mariner's Hope. Engine failure. Approximately 12 miles southeast of Port Heron. Requesting immediate assistance." I released the button. Static. I tried again, adjusting the frequency, but the storm must have been eating the signal. Only fragments came through, broken syllables drowned by interference. I knew then I was on my own. The storm unleashed itself fully. The waves swelled higher, smashing over the bow, drenching me to the bone. The boat heaved like a toy in a bathtub. I fought the wheel, useless without propulsion, just trying to keep from capsizing. Spray stung my eyes, and each breath tasted of salt. Hours blurred together in a chaos of noise and motion. I bailed water when it pooled on the deck, muscles burning. The darkness was absolute. No shore lights, no horizon. Just black above and black below. The storm was a ceiling collapsing around me. When it finally began to ease, I was trembling from exhaustion. The wind fell to a steady howl instead of a scream. The rain softened to a mist. The engine was still dead, and I had no sense of where I was. I dropped anchor, though I doubted it found purchase on the deep sea floor. It was more a ritual than a solution. I retreated into the cabin, soaked and shivering, peeling off my jacket. My hands shook as I lit a small lantern, its glow fragile against the dark. That first night was the longest of my life. I couldn't sleep, not with the boat lurching and every creak sounding like a prelude to disaster. I rationed water, sipping sparingly. My food stores were minimal. A cooler with sandwiches, some protein bars, enough for a day, maybe two, not more. When morning came, the sea was deceptively calm, a flat mirror stretching endless in all directions. The sky was pale, washed clean by the storm. I climbed to the top, scanning for ships, birds, anything. Nothing. The engine refused to respond no matter what I tried. I pulled open the access hatch, fumbling with wet tools, checking connections I barely understood. I wasn't a mechanic. I could only confirm what I already feared. It wasn't starting again. I tried the radio. More static. I lifted the antenna higher, jerry-rigging it with rope, but the silence mocked me. My only lifeline to land was severed. The hours baked me. With no shade, the sun reflected off the water like a furnace. My lips cracked. I wrapped a towel around my head, sipped sparingly from the jug of water. Every drop became precious. On the second night, the loneliness became unbearable. The silence wasn't silence. It was water slapping against the hull, the groan of wood and fiberglass shifting, the occasional distant splash that made my heart seize. I swore I saw movement once, a fin slicing the surface near the stern, but it vanished before I could be sure. By the third day, hunger clawed at me. I ate the last sandwich, forcing it down though my mouth was dry. I tried fishing, tying a line in, dangling it overboard, but the ocean mocked me again. Hours passed without a single bite. Thirst became the greater enemy. My jug was half gone. I stared at the endless water surrounding me, knowing it could kill me faster than starvation. The temptation to drink it rose each time my lips cracked further. I held out, repeating to myself that rescue could come any moment, that drinking salt water would only guarantee death. That night, clouds rolled in again. Lightning flickered on the horizon. My heart pounded. Another storm would finish me. I lashed what I could, braced myself in the cabin. The squall struck like a beast, tossing the boat violently. Rain hammered down, but I opened my mouth, catching as much as I could. I set out pans and bottles, desperate, praying. By dawn, I'd collected enough to ease the gnawing thirst. Days bled together after that. Time lost meaning. My face burned, skin peeling. My arms grew weak from bailing water, from constant vigilance. Hallucinations teased the edges of my mind. I thought I saw shore once, a green line on the horizon, but it faded into mist. Another time, I swore I heard a motor, rushing topside to wave frantically, only to find silence stretching in every direction. But I never gave in. I forced myself to move, to act. I checked the radio daily, even though it was useless. I fished again, and finally, mercifully, caught something. A small silver fish thrashing on the line. I ate it raw, gagging, but the sustenance kept me alive. By the seventh day, I was a shell of myself. My voice was hoarse from shouting into the void. My body ached. But as dawn broke, I saw something I thought was another hallucination. A distant speck on the horizon, growing larger. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, convinced I was imagining it. But it stayed, and it grew. A ship, a real one. Adrenaline surged through me. I grabbed a flare, my hands trembling, and fired it into the sky. The red streak arced above me, hissing. I held my breath. For agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then, the ship shifted course. Tears stung my eyes as it approached, the massive hull rising over me, dwarfing my tiny, crippled boat. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker, words I couldn't even process. Crew members leaned over the rail, pointing, waving. When they lowered a ladder and I climbed unsteadily aboard, collapsing onto solid metal, I wept openly. My legs gave out. Hands lifted me, voices reassured me. I was saved. The ocean had tried to claim me, but I had endured, and even now, safe on land, the memory of those endless days haunts me. The silence, the thirst, the knowledge that rescue was never guaranteed. The sea had stripped me bare, but in the end, I had survived. For the rest of my life, I will never forget the feeling of being adrift, of staring at the endless horizon, wondering if I would ever see another soul again, and I will never take the ground beneath my feet for granted. I used to think thirst was a minor inconvenience. Something that could be solved with a bottle of water grabbed from a gas station fridge or a quick sip from the kitchen tap. Thirst was ordinary, mundane, But when I found myself adrift at sea with no water left, it became something else entirely. It became the edge of madness. The storm had come on fast. The sky had turned from an indifferent gray to a furious black in what felt like minutes. The radio forecast I'd half listened to earlier had mentioned a system building offshore, but I dismissed it. I'd taken this boat out plenty of times. A 22-foot center console, sturdy enough for fishing trips, leisure cruises, even overnighting on calm seas. I wasn't far from shore when the squall hit, but it may as well have been an ocean away. The wind howled through the lines, shrieking like metal dragged across glass. Waves pounded against the hull. I tried to keep the bow pointed into the swell, but the engine coughed, sputtered, and then, at the worst possible moment, died. The wheel went slack in my hands. The boat became nothing more than driftwood in the hands of the storm. By the time the squall passed, night was settling in. I was soaked, shivering, and alone with silence broken only by the slap of water against fiberglass. I tried the ignition again and again, but the motor refused to turn over. I pulled open the storage hatch where I'd kept supplies. A small cooler, 2 bottles of water, some granola bars. I stared at them, already understanding that it wouldn't be enough. Day 1, I rationed carefully. I let a cupful of water wet my tongue every couple of hours. The granola bars, dry and cloying, only made the thirst worse, but I forced down half of one to keep my stomach from twisting in hunger. The horizon stretched endless in all directions, no hint of land. I raised my radio and tried to hail anyone. Static. I charged it, but the storm must have damaged the antenna. By day 2, the sun was merciless. The sky was a hard pale blue without a single cloud. The boat baked like an oven. My skin prickled, tight with sunburn. Salt crusted in the creases of my lips. I gave myself 2 measured sips of water that day, trying to ignore the instinct screaming at me to drain the bottle in a single gulp. I thought of every movie and story I'd ever read about survival at sea. How quickly the body breaks down. Without water, death is measured in days. By the 3rd morning, my lips were split and bleeding. My tongue felt swollen, pressing against the roof of my mouth. I'd finished the last of the water during the night, unable to resist. I woke up with the empty bottle in my hand, horrified at myself. Panic clawed at my chest. The ocean stretched around me, a cruel mockery, water everywhere, not a drop fit to drink. I told myself I wouldn't do it. I knew the danger. I remembered stories of sailors gone mad, their bodies shutting down after giving in to the temptation. Salt water dehydrates you faster. It poisons the blood, forces your kidneys into overdrive until they fail. I repeated these facts in my head like a mantra. Don't drink it. Don't drink it. But by midday, my resolve cracked. My throat felt like sandpaper. Every swallow was agony. My vision pulsed with spots whenever I moved too quickly. I cupped my hands over the side of the boat and lifted a small pool of seawater. The smell was sharp, briny, familiar from a lifetime of fishing trips and summer swims. But now it carried a sweetness that was almost unbearable. I sipped. Just a mouthful. The taste was overwhelming. Salt thick as brine. Metallic. Bitter. My stomach lurched in protest, but I forced it down. The relief was immediate, a rush like a drug. My throat no longer felt like it was tearing itself apart. My body begged for more. By evening, the effects began. My stomach cramped so violently I doubled over on the deck. Diarrhea left me weak, trembling. My tongue felt larger, pressing against my teeth. The craving didn't stop. Every instinct screamed for more. I found myself dipping my hands overboard again and again, drinking in small gulps, unable to resist. Each swallow burned down my throat, but for a few moments after, it was bliss. The night stretched on in fevered waves. My head pounded with pressure, as if my skull was too tight for my brain. My muscles twitched without warning. My heart felt irregular, stuttering in my chest. I knew I was killing myself. The knowledge did nothing to stop me. Day 4 blurred in and out of consciousness. The sun scorched. My skin peeled, raw where salt water had dried in crusts. My thoughts scattered. I'd start sentences aloud and forget what I was saying halfway through. Shadows danced in my peripheral vision. I thought I saw a figure at the bow of the boat, crouched and waiting. When I looked directly, nothing. Hallucinations, I realized dimly. By the evening of the fourth day, I was slumped against the console, shaking uncontrollably. My muscles had begun to spasm. My fingers curled against my will. My tongue felt too big, clogging my throat. I thought I might suffocate on it. I begged aloud, though I wasn't sure to whom. For rain. For a single cloudburst. For mercy. That night, I woke to the sound of water hitting fiberglass. My first thought was another hallucination, but when I opened my eyes, I saw it. Rain. A thin drizzle at first, then steady. I stumbled to my feet, staggering with weakness, and held out my hands. Fresh water, cold and sweet. I tilted back my head and let it fill my mouth. I found a bucket, rinsed it quickly, and set it out to catch what I could. I drank too fast at first, coughing and choking. But even through the pain, the relief was overwhelming. The fire in my body began to cool. My muscles still twitched. My stomach still ached. But for the first time in days, I felt hope. The next morning, the storm clouds lingered, giving me shade. I sipped carefully from the bucket, forcing myself to go slow. The craving for seawater was still there, whispering, but weaker now. I ignored it. Day 6. I spotted the faint outline of a ship on the horizon. I thought it was another hallucination, but it grew larger, closer. I found the flare gun tucked in a compartment, my last desperate tool, and fired. A streak of red arced across the gray sky. The ship altered course. When they pulled me aboard, I collapsed. My skin was blistered, my lips cracked open, my body trembling from dehydration and salt poisoning. They gave me water, carefully rationed in small sips. They wrapped me in blankets and spoke in words I could barely understand. I survived. Against the odds, against my own mistakes, against the cruel temptation of the sea, I lived. Even now, weeks later, safe on land, I can still taste it if I close my eyes. The sharp, metallic tang of salt water, the way it seemed to promise relief even as it poisoned me. I still dream of it sometimes. I wake in the night, mouth dry, heart racing, certain I've swallowed it again. Thirst is no longer mundane to me. It's a demon I've faced and barely escaped. And when I see the ocean now, endless and glittering under the sun, I no longer think of freedom or beauty. I think only of salt, of poison, of how close it came to becoming the last thing I ever tasted.